Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is going to be our final Dicefolk video. We're going to be talking the Pain Talisman today. This is the talisman that I like. So, my favorite talisman is probably the Wrath Talisman. The Warrior Talisman is probably my second, and then Storm and this are kind of mutually in my third slot. We're not talking DLC or any of the unlockable talismans that you get later. Anyways, we're going to talk about the Pain Talisman today, so we're not going to go too deep into everything else. I just kind of want to do my little rating, as this is my last one on Dicefolk, until they come out with another DLC. Wasai is S tier. He's a leader slot unit. This talisman, it's dice as well, but this talisman's all about hurting yourself to gain benefits. It's a very weird dice. Wasai, when he gets hit, he counters. Super strong, just very good, has good health, beefy, can be increased, good to use. When this unit, Cactor, gets hurt, it grants 2 thorns to its leader. It's C tier because it's reactive ability that does nothing until it gets hit, and then it has to get hurt to then make a buff to then hurt something when that gets hurt. It does have synergy with him, obviously, because if this guy gets hurt somehow, and then you have him getting hit, then he's dealing damage plus dealing thorns, it can be really strong. But normally C tier. Next we're going to talk about Griffin Boar. It's a skeleton thing. This is a leadership slot. It deals damage to everything around it. It's probably, I'm going to put it in B, simply because it does have the usage. It attacks and then it deals damage to its allies. The whole point of it is to not buff it, because if you buff its int, then it's going to deal more damage to its allies, and you don't want to do that. So you generally just want to not buff it, and it can trigger the abilities of its allies and buff up your team. The issue is you're dealing damage to your allies, so you need a way to heal them, and you really don't have a way to heal your allies in this as well. Next we're going to talk about Troglamir. This attacks a Chimera and then essentially steals its attack. This is probably A tier for this. It's a leadership slot. You attack, you gain additional strength, you potentially attack again to get more strength, and then you attack your opponent. The issue is it can kill its allies, and killing your own allies can be bad for obvious reasons. So it's a weird situation where you only probably want to hit an ally once to steal some of its strength, and I shouldn't say steal, you essentially copy its strength and add it to your own. It is a good unit, just not super useful, but it's good with the dice. You just have to make sure you're not killing yourself, essentially, and you can make really good use of it. Next we're going to talk about Felrod, which is the little bug here. Looks way cooler in game art. When an ally is hurt, it deals 2 damage to a random opponent that's increased by int. This is a B tier, well, actually it might be an A tier support for this actual talisman. I think we're going to leave it in A tier until we see what the rest of our support can do. But I actually think this is one of the stronger support. It just, when you get hurt, which you're going to be doing anyways, it deals damage. It's never not bad. It's never not good, I guess, is the best way to put it. Next we're going to be talking about Shamir. When it is attacked, it grants a shield to a random ally. The issue is it needs to get attacked to give a shield. This is kind of in the same ballpark as this, although I would argue shield's probably better than thorns, so I will put it in B tier as a support, although I don't think it's that great. Next we're going to talk about Tormentin. Tormentin, once it's attacked, it gives confusion. This is, again, kind of the same as Thorns. I'd actually argue Thorns is probably better in this situation than this is, because they kind of do the same job. Thorns goes on your ally. When they get hit, they take the damage, and Confusion goes on the enemy, and when they attack, they get the damage. Pretty much the same idea. I guess Confusion would be a little bit better in most situations than Thorns, though. Because Thorns, you might have to rotate a chimera out that has thorns on it, and then you lose that damage, whereas confusion will stay on the opposing leader. So we'll go with that. Next we have Biomis. It's once per turn. If your target is an ally, it deals poison damage equal to its strength to a random enemy, but it still damages your chimera. It also needs to be in the attack position. This is just a bad leader. We're going to put it in C tier. Honestly, this is probably a D tier, but we're using that as a stock. But he's a leadership unit, C tier. You don't really want to get this. Very unhelpful in most situations. Next we have the Gambos. It just buffs something up when it gets hit. Super good with this guy. As I said, this is a great combo. I think the first time I ever used this dice, this is actually the combo I got. I got him to start, and I got him as my second Chimera, and it just won. I didn't really need anything else. I don't even think I think I used a random Chimera. I think it was a healer. To be honest, out of my random, I got a healer, and I think I picked that, and I just won the match. That being said, Gambos is every time your ally takes damage, it gets permanent strength for the rest of the fight. It does go away at the end of the fight, but for the whole fight, it does get it. It's super useful and helpful to have. Next, we're going to talk about Krampus, or our boy Krampus here, essentially. Whenever he's hurt, he deals damage to a random opponent equal to the amount of gear that it has, plus 2. This is essentially this, except it needs to get hit, and therefore we're putting it in C tier. When you attack your own unit, this attacks the opposing leader. This is just attacking with extra steps. So we're going to put it here. It's a weird... this dice is very weird. Again, there's synergy, obviously, with the dice, with getting attacked and then getting buffs. The issue is you're killing yourself to kill the enemy leader. Generally don't want to do that. This is actually a very interesting one. We're going to put this in A tier. So what this one does is when you attack your own teammate, it then attacks all the enemies. So it does an AoE attack on all the enemies. This is really strong. The issue is you are attacking your ally to do this, but you are going to deal a ton of damage to all of the enemies as well. So it's like one of those situations where it's you can use its attack to just target one unit, or you can do a little bit of damage to an ally to then just deal a ton of damage to the enemy. Again, this requires healing equipment and some build-up, but essentially it's kind of like doing what he does, except better. That's all I gotta say about it. I actually do like that unit. The issue is if you get too strong, you can actually like KO your own team, which is problematic. Next, we're going to talk about Walvin. When he's attacked, he grants an ally focus, or he grants your allies focus, so he grants everyone else focus. He's essentially a support. He has a lot of health and no damage. The issue is you need him to get hit to be useful, and therefore you have him in the attacking slot, which he's more of a support unit. We're going to put him in B because I think it's weaker than the shield. Actually, we're going to put him above the shield. I think focus is probably stronger in this situation than the shield is. Because it goes to all of your allies, not just one, whereas this can target everybody, or just goes to one unit. Next, we're talking about Vampina. Vampina is, when it gets hurt, it gives regen to a random ally. It's not a bad unit, but it's probably A tier for this Talisman. But there are better healers in the game, obviously. But for this Talisman, it is essentially the only healer, and you know, if you want to get it hurt and it has some int on it, you can actually give some decent healing buffs to your allies. So it's not a bad choice. You just need to make sure that you get some int on this so that the heal is actually worth it taking the damage. Next, we talk about Ostis, the worm. It's like a sand worm from Beetlejuice. Anyways, or Dune. On the start of the turn, if in lead, it deals 2 damage to a random opponent. If not, it deals 1 damage that does not get affected by int to a random ally. Now, this is just deals extra damage via int. It has good amount of health and a good amount of damage. This is a solid leadership that you're generally, if you don't move it on a leader, is going to do some work. I would say it's probably a high A tier simply because it's stable. It's a stable leader. You don't have to really worry about it killing your team that much. Whereas the other two here, they can be very strong, but they have to kill your team to do so. These two are interchangeable to me because he attacks once, probably never hits your ally again, whereas he might attack your ally a couple of times to get that AoE cleave if you have some heal. He'd work well with Vampina, essentially. Ostis is just a good tank leader for this deck simply because he doesn't do anything negative to your team as long as he's in the leadership slot, which makes him good. Next we're going to talk about Agapatera. It's like a grasshopper, rhino-looking scorpion. It's a very interesting creature in this game. When it hurt, it inflicts poison on the enemy equal to the equipment slots on the opposing leader. So, whatever, if you have 3 equipment slots, it does 3 poison. If you have 2, it does 2. So, essentially, this is all going to scale based on your control. This is, like, essentially a leadership slot minion. I would put this in B tier. Poison's cool, but it's only as good as the ability to stack, and it does damage over time instead of doing direct damage. And generally, you want to kill the enemy as quick as possible. I've talked about this multiple times. So we're going to put him in middle of, well, he's upper B tier probably. Next is attack. If the target is an ally, gives regen. This is a worse version of Vampina, but it is a healer in a deck that requires attacking. We're going to put it in B tier because it does have regen, and once you get a little bit of int, it can be useful to attack. The issue is you do not want to increase this minion's attack damage because generally you want to use it to heal. Vampina just does a better job because it gets hurt and then it gives heals away, whereas this has to attack one of your allies to give heals. It's healing with extra steps is essentially what this is. And then last but not least, we have the leadership slot, which is Dracopel. It has high health and high damage. And its int is that it deals damage to itself, so you do not want to increase its int. For this talisman, it's probably a high A tier. It does a lot of damage, and it has a good amount of health, but it hurts itself every time. Arguably, it can get really strong, but if you get too much int on it, you're going to kill it on accident, so you got to be careful with that with like the camping, which can take away from your other int users like this, because you might not want to use random camping to get int when you know that it might hurt your leadership. But he's a good solid leader. Anyways, that's my Pain Talisman tiers list. I hope this helps you guys if you do a Pain run, kind of help you select the correct Chimera that are going to make your run more successful. Obviously, you always get a random choice in Dicefolk for what you get to use, so I want to mention that. Like, you can get any of these other Chimera, but you're only going to get one, and it's very random. So these are your best choices for the Pain Talisman, in my opinion. I think C tier is well belonged. I think B tier is pretty solid. I think A tier is probably your best choices, and I think S tier is your best to best options, and they work very well together. Anyways, I will catch you guys in the next one. I hope you guys enjoy Dicefolk. I've done plenty of videos. I may do equipment. I've mentioned that a couple times. The issue is I don't have all the equipment unlocked because it requires you to actually collect the equipment and put it on to unlock it, whereas I've seen it all, but I haven't used it all because some of it is pretty bad. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day.